What is up, residents of the Mysta Clan? This is your boy sixmysta coming at you with a brand new video. Sorry that the lack of videos has been so eminent on the channel these last few days. It's taken me a while to script this video since it's going to be longer than the average video. Also, this is part 4 to What If Naruto and Hinata got together early. Sorry that the videos haven't been edited lately, but as soon as the next What If drops, videos will go back to normal, all that type of stuff. And also, yeah, please check out the video on this card right here. This is What If Naruto Was Poseidon. It's sitting at 7K views and we're trying to get it to 10K by the end of this month. Make sure to go check it out and click the like button so that there could be another part on that. And yeah, so without further ado, I've wasted your time long enough. Let's get into this. So, last time we left off, Naruto and Hinata had finally had their first kiss and became an official couple. So we're going to start this off directly after that interaction. Naruto would stand up off of basically Hinata, who he has initiated a kiss with, and just walk away. She doesn't really understand why he's walking away, but he's leaving. She feels a pain in her heart as the tears start falling down her eyes. As Naruto leaves the Hyuga compound, Hiyashi would go into the room to figure out what is going on. Hinata would say that she doesn't know. After her and Naruto kissed, he just left. Hiyashi would tell her to give him time because he does love her, just as everyone else in the Hyuga compound does. So, she just kind of let it go. They have a week until they basically are forced to meet back up. And when they do, Naruto just isn't making eye contact. So, at this point, Kakashi would see that something happened between these two. Maybe they're mad at each other, maybe they got into a fight. And then Sasuke, who is also not looking at either of them, he'd basically call for their attention and throw them each a piece of paper. And he'd explain that they have a week to basically train for the Chunin exams. He's trained them up since their performance in the Land of Waves was beyond adequate. So, after the week, they have to go back to the academy and go to room blah 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 and basically, you know, do the Chunin exams. He believes in them, and yeah, he body flickers away. Sasuke would glare at Naruto with Naruto just once again looking at the ground as he leaves to go train, obviously. Naruto would also make his way to only be grabbed by Hinata. He'd just whisper, "Hinata, let me go." She'd say, "Not until you tell me what's wrong." He'd then rip his hand out of her arms, making her fall down, looking back with a shocked expression on his face because he didn't mean to hurt her, but he ends up walking away once again. So Hinata is really confused right now, but she's not giving up. She needs to know what she did. She would run and grab Naruto around the waist and then just basically start crying like, "Naruto, what did I do?" This would only result in Naruto to start crying as well. You didn't do anything, Hinata. But I don't think this is going to work. The tears intensify and she starts screaming, "Why won't it work? We haven't even tried yet." A few more drops would fall from his face as he said, "Because I'm not worthy of you. You're a princess. You're someone that loves everyone. I'm just someone that intruded on your life, and then this all happened." Hinata would spin him around and give him a slap to the face, having the tears on both of their faces dry up, with Naruto being confused. He's in total shock, his face stretched wide. Hinata, her face looks stern. "No one cares if you're not from our clan. Everyone treats you like one of us. You are one of us, Naruto." Once again, the tears start falling. Naruto just had, once again, a really emotional interaction. He falls to his knees holding his face, lowering his hands as the tears fall on them. He'd say, "Maybe that's why. You guys shouldn't treat me like one of you because I'm not." Once again, she slaps him. "Look at me. I said you are one of us. We don't care if you're not related by blood. Everyone in the Hyuga clan cares about you." We'd zoom out to see them training at the Hyuga compound. Looks like they figured things out, as any good couple should. But they're not exactly talking. They're just sparring. They're looking at some Jonin from the Hyuga clan sparring over there, and one of them uses the palm rotation. This brings both Naruto and Hinata to a stop. Neji, being on the opposite side of the fight, just looking as well, would basically jump towards Naruto and Hinata, saying, "Oh, you're looking at the palm rotation too. Too bad neither of y'all will ever be able to master it." They bounce back as they didn't expect Neji to be there, and Naruto and Hinata would divert eye contact from each other and then ask him to elaborate. He'd explained that Hinata doesn't have nearly close to enough chakra to be able to sustain that constant flow of potent rotation chakra, and Naruto, well, he lacks the control. Once again, they ask him, so what can they do about it? Because even though they're considered just as smart as Neji, Neji has more experience when it comes to jutsu. He'd explained that Hinata would be better off just throwing so many suspended, like fucking Jogan strikes through the air that, to create a dome, basically, than actually trying to create it, because it would take less chakra and also less precision. For Naruto could just as well burst out his chakra because he has monstrous amounts of that nine-tails chakra. Naruto would nod and then say, "You have a point, but neither of those techniques would be as proficient as the actual palm rotation." Neji would say, "I beg to differ. If you can make it correctly, you can suspend chakra within mid-air, or even create constant needles being shot from your hands in every direction, in the case of Hinata. But for you, Naruto, you could potentially make a chakra field around you that would injure anyone within it except yourself." Then he'd walk away, leaving both of them to think about what he just said, because he has a point. They just continue their training and push it off to next time. So basically, at this point, the week has passed and the group met back up. They're standing in front of the academy and decide to enter. As they get up to the third floor, they see room 401, the room they're supposed to be on, and outside is two Chunin basically refusing for this kid in green to go in. Hinata and Naruto both know who this is. This is the infamous Rock Lee. He is on Neji's team, and even though Neji has never admitted to his face, Neji sees Lee as a rival, someone who is really powerful, but he always keeps up a dapper and strong appearance to push his rival further. Also, there is Tenten and Neji, obviously. So after the kid gets pushed to the ground, Naruto would just look at Sasuke along with Hinata, and they just nod and then just continue walking, since this is the wrong room. They're supposed to be on the 4th floor and not on the 3rd floor like they are, so it's a genjutsu. As they walk past, Naruto fires through some hands and says, "Absolute Chakra Burst, Genjutsu Expansion," which basically disperses the genjutsu and expands it to other people within the area, but not people within it. So basically what it does is it puts the jutsu on the people that cast it instead of the ones that are currently afflicted by it. So the Chunin, who were actually the gate guards, would transform out of their henge and say, "Hey Naruto, you weren't supposed to do that." Everyone would start walking to the 3rd room after Naruto explains that it was just a genjutsu, and he'd say that maybe it shouldn't be so easy to throw actual Chunin out of their genjutsu, as the team continues walking up. As they continue up the stairs, Rock Lee would grab Sasuke by the arm and say, "Sasuke Uchiha, I heard so many great things about your clan and your vision. Maybe you'd be able to keep up with my speed." Neji'd say, "Lee, don't bother." Lee would say, "No, Neji, I must do this. Even though he was not the Rookie of the Year, he still managed to go through an A-rank jutsu and come out okay. I must test this for myself." Sasuke would go, "You know Naruto's stronger than me, right? even though he thinks that he can become stronger than Naruto pretty soon, because Sasuke still has that little piece of him that is superior to everyone. Lee would say, yes, I know, but he doesn't possess any dojutsu that can help him keep up. My friend Neji over here has the Byakugan. That's how he stays on my level. Neji would scoff and just look the other way, and Lee would say, ha, my rival, always so youthful and confident in himself. That's how a rival should be. But now, Sasuke, let us fight. Sasuke would say okay, and they'd proceed to go to an open area. There, basically, what will happen is they'd start their fight and it will go almost exactly to canon. But at the end, instead of Guy's turtle throwing the kunai or Guy throwing the kunai, it would end with Naruto throwing a palm or air palm at Lee, pushing him off the side, not injuring him, as he lands and a kunai flies beside him, hitting his bandage against the wall. Guy would then basically poof in and go, Lee, that is a forbidden technique. Now, after this exam, you will do 500 laps around the leaf on your hands. Lee would say, sorry, Guy Sensei. I know it's a forbidden technique, only to be used when you have something to protect. But I couldn't afford to lose. Not against the Uchiha. Guy Sensei would start to tear up. No, Lee, you must respect my wishes. Now, 500 pull-ups right here. Lee would start doing pull-ups, and Naruto would just look at Guy with like, what the fuck just happened? Guy would then basically just appear behind Naruto once again. It's like, Naruto Uzumaki, I've heard so much about you from my youthful rival Kakashi. Now, Naruto starts putting it together in his head. This must be Lee's sensei. So he says, yeah, what about me? Guy would say that, Kakashi has told me that you are a beast when it comes to fighting, rivaling even a Jonin in your Genin state. I want to fight you one of these days, so win this Chunin exams and become a Chunin. Lee would then say from the sidelines, no, Guy Sensei, I will be the Chunin this year. Once again, Lee and Tenten would just walk away with Guy saying, let's hope so, Lee. We can do it. As Guy also starts doing pull-ups. If you do not win and become a Chunin this year, we will do 10,000 laps around the leaf on our hands. Yes, Guy Sensei, Lee would say as they just continue their pull-ups. The rest of the team would make it to their room with Naruto laughing at Sasuke saying, oh, you got beat up by someone that doesn't have any chakra. Sasuke would say like, wait, what? And Naruto would elaborate. He'd say Lee has a chakra network, it's just so inactive that he cannot perform any jutsu or enhance his body with chakra. At least that's what Neji told them. Yet he's still able to beat anyone physically. Sasuke would start rubbing his chin. He had his two-tomo Sharingan active that entire fight. Maybe he's going to take Lee's battle methods and use it in his fights. Yeah, that might work. So they make it to the examination room, and I'd say it goes pretty much to canon with Naruto not being able to figure out any of the answers, and Hinata and Sakura in this one would be swapped around. Sakura would be sitting next to Naruto, and he wouldn't even try to peek. He'd just not write anything with Sakura being like, oh, he's gonna fail. That's what he gets for ranking so high above my Sasuke, because, you know, Sakura's still gonna be a simp. So, Sasuke does his thing with his Sharingan, copying another person's movement to get it. Hinata would use her Byakugan, and Naruto wouldn't answer anything. When it comes down to the last question, Naruto would stand up and say that he will never give up, because Shinobi should never give up. Like, how could you be a Chunin if you ever give up? Even if I fail this Chunin exams, I will be the strongest Genin. I will be the first Genin Hokage. This inspires some people who would have otherwise given up to stay. Mainly Hinata, because she was actually not wanting to have Naruto and Sasuke fail because of her. So, hearing this gives her the confidence to continue. As he's done with this, Ibiki would throw a smile, but the window next to him would shatter and a banner would pop out with confetti. I am Anko Mitarashi, the sexiest Kunoichi in the leaf. Obviously, everyone is just fucking shit-faced, with Naruto even laughing. She'd throw a kunai at him, but he'd have faster reflexes, grabbing it inside of the kunai hole and just throwing it back at her and saying, "Oh, what was that for?" She'd say, "Don't talk to me like that, brat. If I'm not the sexiest kunoichi in the village, who is?" Naruto would then jump out of his seat a few rows backwards as he wraps his arm around Hinata and saying, "Whoa, the sexiest kunoichi in the leaf is Hinata over here." She'd blush and really start getting red. Her entire body would warm up, and Naruto would notice this, stepping aside and telling her, "Hinata, calm down." She'd calm down, and Anko would scoff and say, "Well, whatever. Follow me, dweebs. I am Anko Mitarashi, the proctor for the second exam, the Forest of Death." They'd all move out so they could start their exam, with Ibiki picking up tests. As he picks up Naruto's, it's just a picture of Naruto he drew of himself, basically pulling his right eye down with his finger and putting his tongue out. Ibiki would scream out, "Uzumaki!" Anko, you really had to do that, because otherwise Naruto could have actually failed, even though they weren't going to fail anyone as long as they stayed. So, whatever. We skip over to where basically Naruto is talking to Hinata like, "You should really not get that shy, like we're boyfriend and girlfriend after all." And once again she starts redding up, but Anko was explaining, so she throws a kunai at him once again. This time it would actually slit his cheek. When a girl from behind Anko appears, or walks up, Anko almost attacks her, but she says, "Relax, I'm just trying to give you this kunai you threw." She'd say thank you and then appear behind Naruto. I know I fucked up this order, but it sounds cooler. Licking his cheek, basically the blood off his cheek, to only be thrown across the field by a Jugen strike from Hinata. She'd say, "Oh, kid got some pep behind it." And that's where it would continue, per se. She'd say, "Whatever. Go sign up, sign the waivers, and we can continue." The teams would go into select boxes together, wherein they would be given a waiver that they must read and then sign, and at that point they must decide which teammate gets the scroll and is told to keep it hidden. Well, Naruto has a different idea. He wants to see how many people he could get to target them. So what he ends up doing is saying he'd keep the scroll, but he says it hard enough for people to hear. He'd give it to Sasuke, but make a clone of the scroll from another scroll he had, and then put it basically in his belt so that people could actually see it. So they'd obviously think that he has the scroll. At this point, they'd go out of the room, and people would immediately start thinking that, okay, he has a white scroll. And after everyone does have their scrolls in, it would be an assortment of white and black scrolls. The white being the moon scroll and the black being the earth scroll. Colors may vary depending on what version of Naruto you watch. So they would prepare to go to the gate they are given and enter it. Naruto would come up with an idea not to enter immediately, and as Anko says enter, he'd show them to wait, create 3 clones, and then have 2 of them transform into Hinata and Sasuke, have them run into the forest. Obviously, as it goes, the water or the rain team were waiting for them, but the actual squad were trailing about 50 yards behind so that they could see the clones but couldn't be seen following the clones. Obviously, at this point, everyone on the team would have switched into black clothing so that it wouldn't be as easy to see them. And as the water team actually starts attacking the clones, all the clones would come out successful, and Naruto would say, "I'd lead them away." The rain team was obviously just there for the scroll, so they'd ignore the Sasuke and Sakura clones as the Naruto clone would run into the forest. After they've made some pace, basically the Naruto clone would turn around and smile as some more Naruto clones come out. The real Naruto had made more clones and had them circle around to block off the area where the other Naruto clone was heading, and as soon as the water getting gained on them, all the clones and the real Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura would land, or Naruto, Sasuke, and Hinata would land there, for Naruto and his clones to start throwing air palms. One of the shinobi would be fortunate enough to jump up, but this is something Sasuke has been looking forward to. He'd jump up with the move he saw Lee was about to do. He'd kick the Rain Genin up, and then appear above him to only kick him downwards. This is called the Lion's Barrage, as he claims, because, we can have stuff happen in a different order. The Genin would hit the ground, and a scroll would pop out from beside him, out of his weapons pouch. Sasuke would catch it, and they'd all start running. The clones would stay there, keeping them in a prison with the wind palms, and as soon as Naruto is far enough away, all his clones dispel. At this point, they are on good way to the tower, about halfway there, and night has just fallen. They would decide to calm down, with Naruto saying that he's going to need to go take a piss, because he feels something. He doesn't actually need to take a piss, but he creates multiple clones and has them surround the trees, and then jumps into one himself. He'd have one clone in himself not lower their presence, but the other clones do. So, when a mysterious snake girl with a kunai on her tongue, or that's what Naruto recognizes her as, comes out of the forest with a giant snake behind her, Naruto says, "I knew it." But the snake would then jump from one side to the other, grabbing one of Naruto's clones and then jumping towards the actual Naruto for it to be shot down with two wind palms coming from each hand. As it comes down, Orochimaru would say, "I knew he was there." But the other clones would start dropping and start throwing air palms. Orochimaru would just burst his chakra and have all the clones disperse, with Naruto throwing his scroll, or Naruto showing Hinata to run. Him and Sasuke would handle this. She'd start running, because this has been their plan. If someone stronger than them attacks them, they just need to stall them till one of the teammates gets to the tower. Hinata would jump off and eventually run into Neji and Lee and Tenten, and when they ask where the rest of her team is, she says that she doesn't know. They were fighting against someone with a bigger chakra reserve than Lord Third. Neji's facial expression would change and say, "We need to go help them." They'd start bouncing around, and as they eventually get there, they see a beaten down Naruto in real bad condition, and then Sasuke with the hickey on his neck and also in bad condition. They'd help Hinata carry them to the tower, but they'd have to jump away as obviously they need a scroll, and were actually sleeping through the day so that when the other team started sleeping, they could get a scroll. So they weren't really tired and was able to help Hinata all the way to the tower. Once they get to the tower, Naruto would wake up and ask Hinata where they are, and she'd explain that they're at the tower. Doing this would also basically make it so that the sound group won't interact with them, and even though the water group originally had the same scroll as them, in this one I'm giving them a little layback because, that was kind of a straight up attack. And yeah, a few minutes to about an hour would pass, with Sasuke finally waking up with a purple aura surrounding him, as basically Gaara, Kankuro, and Temari come in. Gaara is surprised that they weren't the first team there. He was 100% sure that they would be. Like, no one he saw had enough bloodlust. But as he looks over, he sees Sasuke with the renewed amount of bloodlust. And Gaara starts smiling. His sand starts rising. But Temari grabs him on the shoulder. "Gaara, not now. You can wait. You can fight him later." Gaara would say that, "Temari, touch me again and I'll kill you." She would back up a little bit, but they'd end up heading in. Iruka would be summoned by Hinata, and it would turn out he's been watching them and they've been there for quite a while. So he does mark them down as the first group to get there, and also marks down the time they got there. He'd help basically Hinata take Naruto to a room with Sasuke just limping to his own. And yeah, they'd have to wait a day or two for the rest of the teams to arrive. And basically 2 days pass, and Naruto was still asleep the first two, but a few hours before the last day concluded with the last teams arriving, Naruto would wake up. He'd be in really bad condition, barely having any chakra left, as he holds his head. Like, what happened? And the memories start coming back. As he says what happened, Hinata wakes up and she sees the terrified expression on his face. He basically helped Sasuke kill the girl, but from inside her came out a man, and he did this countless amount of times. They killed him multiple times, yet he kept coming back. That's when it hit him. The guy bit both of them. When he bit Sasuke, Sasuke fell to the ground, but when Naruto was bit, Naruto entered his mindscape. In there, Orochimaru was walking around, but was soon seen by the Nine Tails, and the Nine Tails puts out his hand and saying, "I'm not planning on sharing a body," as he collapses his hand down on top of Orochimaru. Naruto would say that, "Oh, what the hell, where am I? How did he take me here? Who are you?" As the cage began to glow, Naruto says, "You're the Nine Tails. I'm inside the seal, aren't I?" The Nine Tails would start laughing. "Not exactly, twerp. You're in your mindscape. Here you control everything. But not for long. I will get out of this, and I will kill you, and everyone you love." The Nine Tails would start laughing. Naruto would say that, I'm pretty sure Hinata can defend herself, and I wouldn't let you do that in the first place." The Nine Tails would start laughing and say, "You think you can stop me? I am the Nine Tails. Not even the fourth Hokage could stop me. And you let that little snake twerp beat you? The fourth Hokage, your father, would have dominated him." Naruto's eyes just changed into one of surprise. "Wait, what did you just say?" "I said your father would have killed that snake. He's one of the strongest shinobi to ever live." Naruto would collapse to his knees as Kurama realized, "Oh shit. No one ever told him who his parents are." Kurama would start calming down because he already fucked with this kid enough, and he's like, he's gonna suffer. As he goes to lay down, Naruto would stand up and say, "Who was my mother?" Kurama now lays down would say, "Well, fuck, I can just as well tell you. Your mother was Kushina Uzumaki, from the royal blood of Uzumaki. She was given to the village to be my next host, after my host before her was about to die. My host before her was Mito Uzumaki, the wife of the first Hokage." Naruto would sit down and tell me your story. Kurama would say, "I'm not planning on telling you my story. I told you the least that I had to." Naruto would start bugging him until eventually Kurama would break. Kurama would start. "It all started with the old man. We heard stories of the Ten Tails. The Ten Tails was a mindless creature of pure destruction, wielded by the one known as Kaguya. I never seen her, don't really know her powers, but old man Hagoromo was a god. He could easily conquer all nine-tailed beasts without even trying if he wanted to. But what he ended up doing is him and his brother beat his mother and split the Ten Tails into 9 different Biju. That is us." And he starts naming all the Biju, Shukaku, Hanabi, until he eventually gets to himself. And then goes, "And me." Naruto would say, "Okay, then what's your name?" Kurama would smirk and say, "I almost gave that away. But no, we'll continue this later." The old man quickly grew old and died. He gave his blessing to one of his sons, Ashura. Ashura got the power of the sage, while his older son, Indra, got the eyes. Those devilish eyes. He'd howl out and scream, "Madara!" Naruto would ask what Madara has to do with anything, and the Nine Tails would calm down again. He'd say that centuries had passed and he had been a protector of a rice field. The villagers there loved him and he loved them. That was the most peaceful time he was ever at. But Naruto would ask him to continue. He'd explain that Hashirama and Madara were on a quest to gather the Biju, and thus assembled them all under the leaf, and eventually even giving them to different villages. This is when his tone started to change. He sounded angry. Kurama explained that Biju were like people. We were nice, we protected people. Yet you treated us like weapons. Naruto would just cough and say, "They treated you like weapons, now continue." He'd explain that on multiple occasions Madara would basically summon him from the dungeon in the leaf he was kept in, and used him to fight off against Hashirama. And in their last fight, Hashirama broke the seal on him and was able to free him from the summoning. He thought he was finally free from Madara, when Madara used his Mangekyo to force the Nine Tails into one last battle. This was the most epic battle that he's ever seen. He was clouded in Susanoo armor, and he fought. He fought better than he ever did, as he didn't really want to admit this. But that's when he was at his strongest, when he was with that Uchiha. After the fight, Hashirama would seal him inside of his wife, Mito. They'd have one child, and eventually Hashirama would die. Several years later, when Mito was on the verge of death, "I was sealed inside of your mother, Kushina. But even after I was torn out of Mito, she lived for about a month." "The Uzumaki are just monsters," Kurama would say. Naruto would stop him. "What do you mean the Uzumaki are monsters?" Kurama would once again go, "As much as I learned from Mito and Kushina, the Uzumaki have chakra pulls greater than any other clan, matching those of even higher than the Senjus. Some of them, even though they were Chunin, they could beat entire Kage. The entire village of Uzagakiri, or the land of Whirlpool, was full of these beasts. That's why they got wiped out." This is all information Kurama got from Kushina while she was alive. She didn't tell him, but he just basically knew from being inside of her and watching what was happening through her. Naruto would ask then, "Why did you kill my parents?" Kurama's face would change and say, "I didn't want to talk about this, but I didn't kill your parents. I was under the control of an Uchiha." Naruto would say, "But aren't all the Uchiha dead?" "Kid, that didn't happen till 6 years after that. Someone that had the presence of Madara, but he also felt like Hashirama. Don't know how, but he was a monster. He used his one single Mangekyo to put me under his control. Even when I broke out, I still continued rampaging." Naruto would jump up and say, "Then you killed them." "Yes, but before I did, I asked them not to seal me again. I just wanted to be free. But they didn't listen. They didn't understand." And Naruto would calm down. "Okay, I get it. You just wanted to be free. People have been treating me like a weapon." Kurama would be saying, "Yes, and as soon as I get out of here, I'll kill all of them. I'll kill you too, kid." Naruto would say, "Yo, calm down, Jamal. I'm not like the rest. Don't pull out them Nine Tails." Kurama would just basically sit back down and say, "Okay, what do you want? I told you my story." Naruto would then just hum to himself, "Okay then." He'd walk up the cage and then get to a label. He'd look and say that, "This is the seal, right?" Kurama would nod as Naruto ripped it off. Kurama thought he was free, but he wasn't. "I can't open this for some reason." Kurama says, "They must have given the seal's key to someone else." Naruto would say, "Wait a second, I got an idea." He'd step inside of the cage, and this is Kurama's chance. He can kill Naruto right now and gain control. He'd rush his paw to right in front of Naruto, but he'd stop with his nail right between Naruto's eyes. As he says, "You tried, kid." He'd lower his palm and Naruto would smile as he jumps up on Kurama's head. As this happens, Kurama would sigh and say, "Get off my head." Naruto would say, "Not until you tell me what your name is." "The name is Kurama, but we ain't friends." "Not for now, at least," Naruto would say as the gates just burst open. Kurama would bolt back up to his feet with Naruto getting launched in the air. "I'm free! Finally!" As the mindscape starts changing into a field resembling that to one within the land of fire. This is something Naruto's seen before on geographic maps and things. This is the rice paddy field that Kurama lived in. He would go to between two hills, and behind them was a third. He'd cuddle himself perfectly into that, and Kurama would tell to Naruto, or say to him, "Thanks, kid. This is a lot more comfortable than that damn cage. If you ever need me, just ask." He'd smile and then he'd fade out as he woke up in the real world. Time in the mindscape lasts as long as it needs to last, not necessarily vertical. So, as he woke up, he started remembering everything from his landscape, or from his mindscape, as a tear falls down his face. Hinata would ask him, "Naruto, what's wrong?" He'd say, "I know who my parents are." She'd ask, "What do you mean?" And we get yet another flashback. He would be inside of his mindscape, and two figures would appear right after he talked to Kurama. They would start talking to him, Minato and Kushina. They'd explain how they're proud of him for becoming friends with the Nine Tails and becoming the man he is, hoping he treats everyone right. Eventually getting to the point where their chakra reserves are low. They say that they will stay here for a day if he ever needs them, and for now, they'll leave. They leave for him to basically use them a day that he would really need them, and he'd wake up to Hinata. He'd explain everything that happened in his mindscape, and Hinata told him that it's okay, but we need to get to the main hall. The Hokage is about to explain the rest of the Chunin exam. Naruto would quickly hop up, but then quickly go dizzy just as fast, and then would be grabbed by Hinata, telling him to slow down there, bucko, you were really injured. He'd tell her not to worry, and they'd head to the main hall, where he saw Sasuke waiting. Him and Sasuke would basically just stare at each other and then nod, as they had a conversation while fighting Orochimaru. Conversation where they agreed that they will become strong enough to defeat this monster, right before they basically passed out. So, here they stand. The Hokage would talk about the prelims and too many people passed, and how who's going to go against who. Because the sound group wasn't basically eliminated, I'm going to go with Kabuto's entire group quitting instead of just Kabuto. And the two that were fighting, Kabuto's entire group would quit, and then basically the girl from the sound trio would also quit, so that the fights were even. The guy from basically Kankuro's group would be replaced with Sasuke, or not Kankuro's group, Kabuto's group would be replaced in Sasuke's fight by the dude with the gauntlet, and so on. So as people continue, the fights will go as they did in canon, with Shino blocking up the one sound guy's pipes, Sasuke basically beating the guy with the gauntlet after getting some space between them. Obviously, he'd use the gauntlet to try and injure Sasuke's ears. Sasuke would realize what he's doing, trying to catch his balance since that's an entire part of your eardrums. He'd jump back. He'd say, okay, that won't work. He'd then start going through some hand signs for the fire style fireball jutsu, but he'd have an idea, keep it in. He'd amp his feet with chakra, basically lunging towards the other guy, grabbing a kunai and trying to hit him with it. That other guy blocks with the gauntlet, and Sasuke would lift the gauntlet and then let his jutsu release, basically hitting him with a fire style jutsu straight to the chest. This would basically have the proctors call it off so that the sound kid doesn't die, and Sasuke would get off. Hinata would be faced against Neji, just like in canon, and Naruto would be faced against Kiba. Sakura and Ino would still have their fight and still tie because both of them still useless as shit. With Hinata having a better fight against Neji, throwing a few air palms to the point where both of them are exhausted. But Neji would say that, "I'm not going to lose, Hinata. I will prove that I am the greatest prodigy in the Hyuga clan," as he throws off his first attempt at the wind palm. He'd throw it towards her and they'd both get knocked against opposite sides of the stadium since he didn't learn to perfect it. Hinata would be knocked out as Neji stood up a little hazy. Naruto would jump down as Neji walks across to Hinata and picks her up. He'd already been declared the victor. Him and Naruto would walk her to the stands where Neji would be congratulated by his team and his sensei. Lee would look at Neji confused and said, "I thought you didn't like anyone, rival?" And Neji would respond with, "Destiny perceives me to protect Lady Hinata." He's still going to be a little influenced by the destiny thing. I'm not going to take that completely away. But Naruto would smack him against the back of the head saying, "If you don't stop talking all that bullcrap about destiny, I'm going to knock you out." They just nod, and Naruto would jump off for his fight against Kiba. His fight against Kiba is going to go a lot different. He don't really got no chakra. All his chakra went to healing his body. So he has an idea. As the match is about to start, he once again enters his mindscape willfully and said, "Yo, mind if I test out your power? I promise I won't use it as a crutch." Kurama would smile and say, "Sure kid, just take it." Naruto would all of a sudden sprout 3 tails. Everyone in the stadium got worried. Gaara got an evil smirk on his face. Naruto would just push his hand out and say, "Don't worry, I'm in control." He'd lunge towards Kiba, basically beating him, throwing him from side to side, hitting him from every way possible. And as he's up in the air, Naruto says, "Well, now you're here," creating 3 clones, all who threw wind palms from the bottom at separate times so that it hit him up further and further, with Naruto kicking down on him to push himself up further, throwing both his hands down with separate air palms and says, "Naruto Uzumaki Hyuga Barrage, air palm version." He'd throw air palms down and Kiba would be sent into the ground. He'd basically had just eaten his words of him saying that he's going to become Hokage and then he's going to take Hinata from Naruto too, which was a little far-fetched, but it is what it is. Gaara more bloodlusted than ever. The fight with Lee would go a lot different. Gaara would just try to kill him straight off the bat, with Lee having to within the first few seconds take off his weights. He'd say, "Sorry, Guy-sensei, but I must take these off." Guy-sensei would just throw a thumbs up as Lee threw down the weights. Everyone would think, what is taking off some leg weights gonna do? 2 giant craters in the ground form as dust blows up as high as Lee dropped them. And he disappears off the statue. Barely even the Jonin can keep up with his movement. Kakashi even says that he won't even be able to match that with a body flicker. Lee is just hitting Gaara and then disappearing again. And this is when Lee says, "Time to get serious. First gate, open!" He then starts overpowering Gaara's sand, hitting Gaara through it. Gaara starts getting more bloodlusted, attacking faster and faster and faster, until something happens. Lee says, "I've had enough. Second gate, open! Third gate, open!" Now, he lunges towards Gaara, throwing his leg around. Even if this kills Gaara, he would at least have the victory. He kicks Gaara on the head, having Gaara fall to the ground. As his sand armor starts cracking, Lee says, "Oh no," as he goes out of the third gate, out of the second gate, and out of the first, back into his base. "Oh no, Guy-sensei, it didn't work. It didn't last long enough." This is when Gaara would stand up and say, "Blood? Blood?" He'd start laughing as he threw sand towards Lee, who wasn't able to dodge it. He'd basically pull it up and say, "Sand burial!" as he crushed Lee screaming out. Everyone knew Lee could not handle this. All the Jonin, Naruto, Neji, even some other people from other villages jumped in to stop Gaara. He'd calm down and then go back to the stands, looking at Naruto, saying, "I'm going to kill you if we ever meet." Naruto would smirk and say, "You can try it, One-Tails." The Jonin's faces would turn bleak, with the Hokage not really changing, but in his mind he thinks, "Oh, so there might be an invasion. I guess I'm going to take the 1 month to prepare." He then shout out that basically the semifinals are over and that they must return in a month to see their opponents at the Chunin Exam Stadium. They'd all leave with Naruto basically saying that, "Yo, Hinata, let's go to the hot springs." She'd agree and they'd be off. This is obviously a day after the Chunin exams and not the same day. With Naruto, when he gets in there, Hinata is about to enter the other side. When he gets there, he sees an old man with white hair, and he walks on the water, grabbing the old man by the hair and throwing him outside. The old man is able to maneuver and basically grapples to the opposite side wall, and then lunges towards Naruto, trying to punch him. But Naruto blocks and then throws an air palm, basically sending him into the water, and the water is spitting up. The girls on the other side would scream, and Hinata would quickly put on her clothes again, before even entering the hot spring, as Jiraiya's like, "Yo kid, what was that for? I'm peeping." Naruto would have an angry look on his face, and he says, "Well, you are pretty strong, but my girlfriend's on that side, and if you continue peeping, I will kill you." Jiraiya's expression would change and say, "Oh, you'll kill a legendary Sannin?" Naruto basically freezing, saying, "Jiraiya?" Jiraiya would say, "Yes, but who are you?" He'd say, "My name's Naruto Uzumaki," as he bowed down. He says, "Naruto?" And Naruto would say, "Yes, Minato's son." Now Jiraiya is just flabbergasted. Since when did Naruto know that Minato was his father? Naruto would sit him down to explain everything. He'd basically also yell out to Hinata that she should go back to the Hyuga compound. He'd meet her there. They'd relax in the water as Naruto told him about how he befriended the Nine Tails while being knocked out. He also encountered Orochimaru and talked to his parents within his mindscape, and they told him about him. It was already night and the hot springs were about to close as they got out with shriveled up bodies, as Naruto had told Jiraiya about his entire life and how happy the Hyuga clan made him. Jiraiya would be happy that Naruto made good without him. Like, he was supposed to be here, like Minato asked, but he wasn't. He couldn't. So he says that, how about he trains him? He'd say that he should first basically learn the summoning jutsu. But Naruto would say, "Why would I need to learn a summoning jutsu when I can just summon the Nine Tails?" Jiraiya would say, "But what if you want something smaller? Something for recon, or a toad that you're able to hide inside while it sneaks into an enemy village?" Naruto would rub his chin and say, interesting. Okay, let's go for it." He'd show Naruto the hand signs, and Naruto would start meditating. Jiraiya would ask him what he's doing, and he says, "Just wait, I'm gathering chakra." Now Jiraiya is really flabbergasted. There aren't a lot of people that can gather chakra simply by meditating, since that's how Sage Mode works, but Naruto just assembling normal chakra? Naruto would explain the process of how the Hyuga use it to improve their Byakugan, but he's using it just to increase his chakra pool in general. By doing this, you could basically cultivate, just become stronger by meditating. But whatever. He then stands back and then performs the hand signs, clips his finger, and slams it on the ground. First try comes out Gamabunta. They'd have the initial challenge that they did in canon, with Naruto having to once again borrow some of Kurama's chakra, only getting one tail this time since Kurama said that the kid's getting greedy, but it was for a good cause. So, one day down and Naruto already basically got Gamabunta. What can Jiraiya really teach him now? Naruto would look up and say, "I know. How about you teach me the Rasengan?" Jiraiya would pale and say, "How do you know about that jutsu? That's an A-rank technique. I can't be teaching that to a genin." He'd say that, "Well, my father told me about it in my mindscape, and he said that it would be a really useful jutsu." Jiraiya would sigh and say, "Okay." He'd get out some balls, and for the rest of the month, they'd be working on this jutsu. Obviously, this jutsu being the Rasengan. Throughout this month, Naruto had an idea and tells Jiraiya, "Hey Jiraiya, you think you can help me with this?" Jiraiya would say yes, but only if he reads Make Out Paradise. Naruto would then officially give him the name Pervy Sage, because you can't be giving a 12-year-old boy a porn book. Jiraiya would just rub his head and say, "You're right, kid, but never too young for research." Naruto bonks him on the head again and says, "Flippin' hell, Jiraiya." He said, "Okay, what do you need help with, kid?" Naruto would explain the fundamentals of the Hyuga clan's palm rotation, and then says, "Okay, if the Rasengan can fly through the air, as he forms a Rasengan only after 2 weeks of mastering it, he will throw it and it eventually dissipates. He says that means that it can stay in the air, right?" And Jiraiya would explain that even though it's basically twisting chakra, it basically creates enough of a wind force to lift itself off the ground. Naruto would rub his shin and say, what if we applied something about it to the Hyuga styles of palm rotation? Create a complete dome around us. Getting rid of the 360 vision problem for me since I don't have the Byakugan, but also injuring anything that comes near me, and even, as you said, creating a gust that could even knock away entire ninja tools. Jiraiya would agree and they'd start working on this. They wouldn't necessarily perfect it in time, but the Chunin exams would start. Jiraiya say that he's going to stay here just to see how Naruto does as an apology for what happened. The third Hokage would invite Jiraiya up to the booth since he was staying there. So it was Jiraiya, the third Hokage, and Orochimaru in disguise as the third Kazekage. They'd all be talking, and eventually the matches would start. Naruto against Neji would go for a taijutsu only battle. This is what Naruto vows, for they are both of the Hyuga clan, and thus they will fight like Hyuga. At this point, everyone considers Naruto part of the Hyuga clan, even though he's not a Hyuga, because of his great relationship with Lady Hinata. So, as they start fighting, it goes a lot similar to any normal Naruto fight, with them trying to burst each other's chakra points, Naruto from knowledge and Neji from his Byakugan. But it would eventually get down to where Neji was tired, Naruto not, and Neji throwing a palm rotation. This would hit Naruto and pretty badly injure him, but now it's time for him to show off his technique. He'd run towards Neji, basically spinning, similar to how Kiba would spin if he initiated the Fang over Fang. This intrigued Kiba and his sister in the stands. They go like, wait, is he? But no. Then they see him pushing out his hands, spinning his entire body in a spherical mode. This is the first time Naruto's trying it. The Rasengan version of the palm rotation, or what he calls the palm dome. He'd throw his basically rotation palm in every direction, eventually hitting Neji. It would knock him against the wall, and Naruto would walk up. He'd say, well, what now, Neji? Hey, look at you, what's up? Neji would shake his head and say, you won, Naruto. You're the greatest prodigy of the Hyuga. Naruto would smile and help Neji up as Neji lifted Naruto's hand in Naruto's victory. The entire crowd would actually begin to cheer because that was impressive. 2 genin doing beyond Jonin level techniques of the Hyuga clan. Even the leader, Hiyashi, he was impressed by Neji's efforts, since no one ever taught Neji this technique. Neji's father jumps off from the stands, running towards his son, hugging him and saying that he's proud. This would lead into Naruto and Neji just leaving the stands, and all of the fights proceed as canon that remain at least. And eventually, when Gaara and Sasuke's fight comes up, things would go canon. Sasuke and Kakashi would arrive late, and instead of Sasuke using multiple Chidori, he'd only use 2 Chidori up until this point, and the third landing an actual blow on Gaara, having Gaara create an entire dome over him because of the blood dripping down his forehead. An eye outside. Orochimaru would think to himself, it's too early to start the process. Hiruzen and Jiraiya would look over and say, that's the One Tails. Why is he in a dome? Orochimaru would sit forward and say, I don't know, he's never done this before. Not even when we attacked other villages have you ever done this before. Maybe it has something to do with him getting hurt for the first time. Or second time in this case. Kid never really saw blood. At least not from him. And that's when it happens. Gaara would break out and a Genjutsu would fall. Basically, the Hokage and Jiraiya would jump up to the roof where Orochimaru would come out and they'd start the sound invasion. Naruto, Sasuke, and Hinata almost immediately break out of the Genjutsu, with Sakura and Shikamaru being next. Naruto would realize Shikamaru ain't really asleep, bonk him on the head and say, come on Shikamaru, you need to help. Instead of, as in canon, Hinata being kidnapped, she was actually waiting on the stands for Naruto. So when the Cloud Shinobi came around, they were like, the Cloud's into this too? And the 2 Cloudmen would say, hand over the Hyuga. for only one of them to be hit by Neji in the back of the head, incapacitating him. The other one trying to grab Hinata, but she hits him with an air palm, basically forcing him backwards. This allows for more of the Hyuga clan, instead of chasing after Hinata, to be able to just help in the invasion. Up on the roof, it's Orochimaru versus Jiraiya and the Hokage. As their fight starts, he says, "Can you block this, Hokage?" as he throws his hands out and hits the ground. Two cases emerge, with a third coming up. Hiruzen would throw a jutsu saying, "No you don't, Orochimaru, not him, not the fourth," as the suitcase is stopped. Orochimaru would sigh and say, "Oh well, I only need the first and second to defeat you." And that interaction would stop there, as we look back to Naruto. Naruto, Shikamaru, Hinata, Neji, and Sasuke would be rushing after Gaara, with Sasuke being ahead of everyone else. When they eventually encounter the basically sound Jonin, Shikamaru and Neji would stay behind. So when they do, Naruto and Hinata would continue to where they see Sasuke being pulverized by Orochimaru and his curse seal being awakened. Naruto was the only, everyone at this point knew, because he awakened his curse seal 2 times already in front of other people. So he'd be like, "Sasuke, control yourself. This anger is not you." That's what Naruto would scream out. For Sasuke to just look over at him and say, "I will kill him." But Gaara starts choking him further. "You're not gonna kill anyone." As his voice becomes more like Shikaku's, he'd give off a laugh, for only him to be struck by Naruto's air palm. Hinata would be there trying to help Sasuke, with Naruto fighting with Gaara. Gaara would transform more and more until he eventually turns into the One Tails. At this point, people don't know he's mastered the Nine Tails, and Kurama don't really want to bother fighting Shikaku. So Naruto would end up summoning Gamabunta. Gamabunta would be like, "What do you want, Naruto?" He'd say that, "Oh, we got a little squirrel over here," with Shikaku throwing wind blows saying, "I'm not a squirrel, I'm the One-Tailed Shikaku." Naruto would have the same interaction with Gaara he had, and telling him how Hinata is the reason he's sane. Gaara needs to find people he loves, people he needs to protect, and he will be happy. On the other side though, Hiruzen and Jiraiya had been fighting the first, second, and Orochimaru, and had been getting really worn down, when Jiraiya had an idea. He'd push against the first chest and then scream, "8-pronged seal!" pushing him down on the ground, sealing him away within a piece of paper. Hashirama would smile, saying, "Thank you," as his spirit fades back into the afterlife. Orochimaru, seeing what they're gonna do, has Tobirama only do basically defensive jutsu. Hiruzen would say, "No way." He'd throw 2 clones out, basically one handling Tobirama as him and the other clone approach Orochimaru. He'd tell Jiraiya to stay back, and as he starts performing hand seals with all of his clones simultaneously, Jiraiya screams, "No, sensei! It's not worth it!" as he starts moving towards Hiruzen. One clone seals Tobirama as the Reaper breaks through it. The Reaper breaks through another clone and Hiruzen himself, pulling either side of Orochimaru, taking both of his arms away, and even pieces of his brain. He feels a little confused. He doesn't know what's going on. The barrier around them break as the sound for grab Orochimaru and jump off. Kabuto would interfere, basically keeping them there as long as he possibly could. When Kakashi jumps up to finish his fight with Kabuto, the sound 4 is long gone and Kabuto just body flickers away. This is a problem. The third is dead, and Orochimaru got away. On the other side, Naruto and Gaara had just finished their fight. Naruto had knocked Gaara out after de-transforming Gamabunta from his transformed state of the Nine Tails, and basically what that ends up meaning is he gives Gaara a Takano Jutsu, saying that if you love people, you will succeed. This would be the end of the Sound Invasion, and Naruto and Sasuke would be put in the hospital for their respective injuries. Naruto being out in a few days and Sasuke still unconscious. Naruto would return to the Hyuga compound where he finds Hinata and they just start talking. But that is also going to be it, guys. I really hope y'all enjoyed this part of What If Naruto and Hinata got together early. This is the hour special for this series, and a lot of effort went into this. I know this isn't edited, but when the movie for this comes out, it is going to be fire. So make sure to smash like, subscribe, and comment down below. Also check out our boy Steak, link in the description. Also, now that it's the end of the movie and the cards are about to pop up, make sure to check out What If Naruto Was Poseidon the movie. It's a 3-hour long video. You will enjoy it, I promise. Now, without further ado, this has been your boy Six. Peace.
1, 2, 3, let's go!
Subscribe for more. Yada yada does it.